Billow Kerow, observing our culture ever since, and to you and of course Suba also, since we promulgated Katiba in 2010, has there been the principle, the living by of the principle of good governance and constitutionalism and the rule of law?
Very well. I think I also want to comment on a number of issues on the economy that Mheshimiwa talked about. But I think our biggest problem in this country is about governance. The reason why we have this economic crisis, the catastrophe that the President says we try to avoid, this is this is arising from bad governance. When you're talking of bad, huge debts in the country that have been borrowed, controller is saying we can't trace that debt. It has not been used for development. It's bad governance. But let me just contextualize it in respect to what my colleague has said on a number of these issues. One, when we were doing this constitution in Bomas, we did cost this constitution. It was not done out of the blues. I was there for a whole year. I was the chairman of a technical working committee for 3 of the chapters, public finance, public service, and security. And I know we hired experts from Nairobi University to do a costing. The challenge we have here, let me tell you, is because the government has not been able, central government has not been able to devolve some of the functions that should have gone to the county government. And so we have a situation where there's duplication. Many, for example, in Ministry of Agriculture, in Ministry of Water, in many sectors, you find functions that should have gone to the counties, national government is skipping it. And so we have ministries that have remained as they are, budgets are still the same. So, I mean, really the question is not, and even when we find some of the actions by the government, today we are talking about the appointment of CSs. It's not the Constitution that created it. It's the executive that is doing what they want to do. So I don't think the Constitution can be blamed for the economic woes that we have. It's because of bad economic policies arising from bad governance. The second is, let me clarify also on the issue of banking. The government has not reduced borrowing domestically. As Mheshimiwa has put, what has happened is a number of banks have simply reduced the amount of lending they have given to the government. And this for obvious reasons. They are concerned about the debt burden of the country, the debt stress, and they are worried. And I'll give you an example. For example, Standard, you saw in the report a couple of weeks ago, Standard Chartered, they completely disposed of all their treasury bills and bonds completely, so that, and at a loss, so that they don't want to take a risk. Nobody wants to take a risk. That's why when the president came to power, domestically, they were borrowing. The treasury bills and bonds were at 9%. And he was saying, I will not allow it to go to 10. Okay. Today, at 18 is what the government is borrowing. Why? Because of that fact that no one is willing to take a risk really give to the government. But the government is borrowing. They have not reduced their borrowing. In fact, it's borrowing more than they've borrowed in the other years. And you will see that at the end of the 5 years. Because every time people are in power, they tell you we're not borrowing. Because the debt ledger, our debt management is shrouded in secrecy. We do not have. Today, if you ask anyone in government, you'll get as many different answers of what our debt is. They'll check World Bank, they'll check IMF, they'll check this, they'll check that. Nobody has a figure because the debt is always a moving target. Lastly, I want to also say that, you see, when you say the inflation is down from 9% to 6.8%, what you're trying to tell Kenyans is that the prices of goods and services have reduced. You go and ask anybody on the streets whether indeed the prices of goods and services have reduced in the last 1 year. Let me be.
No, my brother. Let me mention 3 things which are unfactual. Okay. And these are things which can be confirmed with the PS Treasury. Yeah. And
I'm not finished. I'll give you the time. Let him finish. I'll give you the time you respond.
I'm not finished. The reason is because those items that the KEBS looks at when it's determining our inflation do not necessarily look at all, the weighing of those things, and all those things all make an impact. So if you go by that figure, what you're trying to say is that because our inflation is down, then it means our cost of living, our cost of things are going down. No, the reality is everything has gone up, the prices have gone up, and those figures are looking at, those particular components that do not necessarily impact on the lives of Kenyans. So I think I want to say very clearly that we agree, and based on your question, that governance is a major issue. Not in terms of whether our freedoms, we are freedoms more than many other countries in the region and many countries in the world. We have clearly a democracy, elections are held. We are very, I don't think that is the issue of governance, but it's governance in the context of managing institutions, managing resources. Appointments, you have a ministry, power disappears 3 times in a month, in 3 months, and no action is taken.
Okay.
those are the kind of things, those issues of governance, the ones that are impacting on the lives of people.
On governance, so just hang on, let me give him the right of reply and then I'll come to. Yes, please, and briefly, so yeah.
Parliament of Kenya changed